Thank you all for coming today. My name is Sarah Hollis. I am a part of Girl Scout Troop 1207. I just graduated from high school, and today I'm going to talk to you guys about how Wyoming's government works, how to be involved, and why you should be involved. Wyoming's legislature is the body of government that makes the laws. So Wyoming has something that's called a part-time legislature. Basically, what this means is Wyoming's legislature only meets for a short period of time every year. Instead of spending all year in session, they only meet for a couple of weeks where they go through all of their business, and then the legislators go back to their towns and their communities and whatever other jobs they have. So Wyoming's government is split into two chambers, the House and the Senate. The House has 60 members and the Senate has 30. Each of these chambers has slightly different rules, but in terms of just members of the community, those slightly different rules don't really matter. Both chambers need to approve a bill in order to be able to sign the bill into law, or send it to the governor. And then House representatives serve 2-year terms, while senators serve for 4 years. Both chambers have different leadership. So in the Senate, there is the Senate President, the Vice President, and Majority Leader, which are all held by the Majority Party, which is the party that has the most members. The Minority Party, or the party with the least members, has the Minority Floor Leader, Minority Whip, and Minority Caucus Chairman. In the House, they're held by the Majority Party is the House Speaker, Speaker Pro Tem, Majority Floor Leader, and Majority Whip, while the Minority Party holds the Minority Floor Leader, Minority Whip, and Minority Caucus Chairman. So the leadership determines what bills come up for vote and when they come up for vote. The Majority Party in each House decides this stuff with input from the Minority Party. So the Majority Party gets the more of the decision with slight input from the Minority Party. So the legislature has two different types of years. So in odd years, that's a regular year or a general session. In an even year, it's a budget session. So in odd years, they do a session that is 40 days long, where they go over every kind of bill and send all that through. And in even years, they meet for 20 days, where the main focus is the budget of Wyoming. They do bring other bills up for vote. However, these bills require a 2/3 vote to bring up to the floor. Next is the judicial branch. And so the judicial branch is the court system in Wyoming. There are several levels of court. The lowest level of court is the municipal court. They cover damages up to $750, ordinance violations, and also cover civil jurisdiction. Their terms are set by the municipal, and judges on these courts mostly just serve as part-time jobs. Next level of courts is the circuit courts. They cover everything up to $50,000 in damages and deal in family violence, stalking, forcible entry, and detainer cases. They also hear all misdemeanors. Circuit court judges are appointed by the governor in Wyoming in a similar manner to the Supreme Court justices, which I will explain in a moment. They will serve 4-year terms. The next level is district courts of Wyoming. They have general jurisdiction in the state. The district judges preside over felony, criminal, and civil cases, as well as juvenile and probate matters. Probate matters are when the courts decide whether a will is valid or invalid. District courts also hear appeals from lower courts. The jurisdiction of the district courts is unlimited except for civil cases under $50,000, small claims cases, and misdemeanors, which go to the circuit courts. As a result, the work of the district courts includes the most serious cases and controversies in the state. There are 23 district judges in the state, organized into 9 judicial districts. District court is held in each county, so some judges must travel to all counties within their district to hear cases that arise there. In addition, district judges travel to other districts when necessary to assist another judge with the workload of their district. District judges are chosen like justices of the Supreme Court and judges of the circuit courts. They serve 6-year terms. The highest level of court in Wyoming is the Supreme Court of Wyoming. This is the last stop for all cases that involve Wyoming law. For cases that involve federal law, the case can still be moved up to the United States Supreme Court. Since the Supreme Court is the last stop for Wyoming law, the court can do several things. Sometimes the decisions follow previous cases or current statutes. Sometimes there is not an exact statute, and the court has to interpret or extend other decisions. On occasion, the court will reject a previous decision and apply a new rule of law. The court can also decide something does not align with the U.S. or Wyoming Constitution and declare the ruling unconstitutional. So the manner of choosing Supreme Court justices is very similar to how they choose circuit court judges and district court judges. And so there are 5 justices on the Wyoming Supreme Court. When a vacancy occurs on the Supreme Court, the governor chooses a new justice from a list. 1 year into their term, they are voted for retention on a nonpartisan ballot. If retained, they serve an 8-year term and then seek re-election on a nonpartisan ballot. The last section of Wyoming's government is the executive branch. The executive branch is the branch that enforces the laws. So the governor is the head of the executive branch, and the governor is elected by the people of Wyoming. They serve a 4-year term, and the governor is limited to 2 terms by the Wyoming Constitution. There are 5 total top elected officials, including the governor. So there's also the Secretary of State, State Auditor, State Treasurer, and Superintendent of Public Instruction. Like I said before, the governor is the highest elected position. The governor can veto bills that are passed by the legislature. The governor of Wyoming also possesses a power called line item veto, which means that they can veto sections of a bill, but sign the rest of the bill into law. The governor has other powers, which include filling vacancies in office. The next position is the Secretary of State. The Secretary of State is second in power, serves a 4-year term, and has many responsibilities such as validating elections. The State Auditor protects public money, makes sure it's accounted for and being used in its most efficient manner. The State Treasurer invests the state's money. The Superintendent of Public Instruction supervises the public education system in Wyoming. All 5 of these are very important jobs, and all 5 of these positions are up for re-election this year. In addition to these 5 top elected positions, there are many state agencies. I could not go over all of them because there is a multitude. I will have a link later in the presentation to all of them. So here's an example of a couple of them. So the Department of Health meets the healthcare needs of citizens of Wyoming. The Department of Family Services protects the safety, well-being, and self-sufficiency of Wyoming families. You're probably very familiar with the Department of Transportation, which does things like driver's license and takes care of state roads. And the Department of Workforce Services, which hands out unemployment and also helps people with polishing resumes, interview help, or even finding jobs. So all of these agencies impact our day-to-day lives, even if you don't necessarily realize it. Policies of state agencies are often directed by the governor or the state legislature. So it's impacted by other areas of the government as well. In addition, Wyoming has an impact in the United States federal government. In total, Wyoming has 3 seats in the United States Congress. There are 2 seats in the United States Senate and 1 in the House of Representatives. In the House of Representatives, there are 435 voting members distributed across the United States. The amount of representatives each state gets is determined by the population of the state. Wyoming has their 2 seats in the Senate, which is out of 100 total senators. This is evenly divided. Each state gets 2 senators. Representatives in the House of Representatives of the United States Congress go up for election every 2 years, while senators are up for election every 6. So that means that in this election, we have the House Representatives up for election, and we currently this year have one of our senators up for election. In addition to this, so the 3 Congress members vote on bills in the United States Congress, and they bring Wyoming's views and needs to the table. In addition, the number of seats that a state has in Congress determines how many electoral votes a state gets. In this case, Wyoming has 3. Electoral votes are used to determine the presidency. The President of the United States is not decided by the popular vote. Instead, the President is determined by the Electoral College. So, most states, with the exception of 2, will just give all of their electoral votes to whoever wins the popular vote of their state. Going down, so we've covered the federal government and Wyoming's place in that. We've covered Wyoming's state government. Wyoming also has governments in its cities and counties. All cities and counties run in similar manners. Each city has a city council, while each county has county commissioners. In this case, Cheyenne has 3 wards with 3 representatives each. Cheyenne also elects a mayor. Then there are the county commissioners. The county commissioners act as both a legislative and executive body, creating and enacting ordinances. Laramie County has 5 county commissioners, and then there are also several other county positions that come up for election that are impact your lives, such as the sheriff or the county attorney, and there's several other ones as well that a lot of them are up for re-election this year. So, to vote in Wyoming is really easy to register, and that's one of the advantages that Wyoming has in voting. So you can register in person by going to a county courthouse. You can register by mail. The form is online, and then you fill that in and mail it to a county courthouse. Or you can register in person on election day by going to your polling place. Because Wyoming has same-day voter registration, Wyoming is exempt from the motor voter law. So in most other states, you can register by going to the DMV. So if you ever move to another state and you decide to register to vote there, you can register at the DMV. However, Wyoming does not part of this. So to register to vote in Wyoming, one simply needs a valid Wyoming driver's license or the last 4 of their social security number. So there are 2 kinds of elections this year. There is the primary election, which is at the end of this month, and then there is the general election in November. The primary election date is set by the state, so not every state has the same election date. So you may have heard of other states' primary dates. In this case, Wyoming is having it on August 21st. In the primary election, you vote within your party. So if you are a registered Republican, you vote for the Republicans. If you're a registered Democrat, you vote for the Democrats. If you are an independent, you can vote on the nonpartisan ballot, or you can change your voter registration to one of the 2 parties and vote that way. The purpose of the primary election is to narrow down the field for the general election. So instead of having 20 people running for one office in the general, you have 1 person from each party and whatever third parties make it onto the ballot. So the point of the primary is to streamline the general election. So it's important to vote in the primary elections, because if you don't vote in the primary, the candidates that you like for various positions may not be there for you to vote for in the general election come November. The general election date is a national date, so everyone goes to the polls on November 6th this year. And that is when you vote for the best person overall. If you cannot make it to your polling place on the election date, you have the option to do early voting, in which you go to your courthouse and you can fill out a ballot then. Early voting started July 6th for our primary election, and it will start September 21st for the general election. If you're unable to make it to a courthouse in that time frame, you can also request an absentee ballot. In that case, you will get a ballot sent to whatever address you provide. You fill out your ballot and then you send it back in to be counted. So whatever your situation is, there is a way for everyone to vote in the state of Wyoming. So, one of the big questions that I'm hoping to answer for people is how they can get involved in Wyoming's government. The first and most obvious answer is to vote. It happens every other year for the most part in Wyoming, unless there's a special election. It's twice every other year. It's not very time consuming, but it still makes sure that your voice is heard in Wyoming's government. Next, you can contact your representatives in office. All of these state legislators have a phone number and email address listed on the Wyoming Legislature's website. You can get contact information for all the top 5 elected positions online as well. So you can email or call people and tell them how you feel Wyoming's government's doing, or you can talk to them specifically about like bills that have come up, other issues that are coming up in Wyoming. If you're in Cheyenne at the time that the legislature is meeting, you can go to the legislature and observe if you want, and you can also speak with representatives there. So there's like this little card thing that you fill out, and you say who you want to speak to, and you say what you want to speak to them about, and then someone goes and gives it to them, and then when they have a few minutes, they'll come out and speak with you. In addition to that, you can even run for office. This is the way you can make your voice most heard in the government, is by being the government itself. I have another one is that you can help run other people's campaigns. So if there's someone that you really like, you can volunteer for their campaign. People are always looking for people to help in their campaigns, whether it's phone banking, going door to door, entering information into databases. The campaigns is limited since we only run campaigns every other year, but if that's not you, if it's something you're interested in, you can also volunteer to help with people's party, with the Republican or Democrat Party. We're looking for volunteers all the time. So that's also an option. And one final thing I don't have on here is protests. Those can be highly effective in getting your voice heard to the government. So if you're really passionate about something and you're able to organize a protest, those can often be ways for the government to hear your voice, although it's not always a guarantee that they're going to do anything. The biggest question that I'm trying to help people out on is, why is it important to be involved in your government? Government decides how fast you can drive on the highway and how much funding schools get. The government decides these things on your behalf because it doesn't make sense for everyone to go out and vote on every single thing. So instead, you vote on the people you want to make the decisions for you. You can go on Facebook and make comments all day if you want. It's not going to help anything because your representatives aren't going to cyberstalk your Facebook looking for how you feel on issues. They don't have time for that. So instead, you need to make your voice heard. Find what you're passionate about, whether it's immigration, healthcare, schools. These are all things that the government decides, and they always want to hear how the people of Wyoming feel about these things. In the United States, voting is one of the rights that are given to you. Make sure you use it. It's not something that's required. Other countries require voting. The United States doesn't. That doesn't mean you should sit at home anyway. Oftentimes, representatives or people in office are older than you. They've been around longer, but they're also not going to be here for as long as you will. So what kind of world do you want to inherit from them? What kind of world do you want your children to have? That's why you need to be involved, because these representatives don't have the same stake in there that you necessarily do, because they're not going to be around as long as you will. Personally, I started getting involved when I went to the legislature to talk to representatives about an anti-discrimination bill that was being brought up to the legislature. This is what really sparked this for me. My involvement was further inspired by my AP government teacher, Ms. Todd, and my involvement in Girls State after my junior year. So find what's going to spark you, what's going to inspire you, and what will bring you to talk about Wyoming's government itself. So I think that people aren't necessarily involved in government because they don't understand how the government works, they don't understand how they can be involved, or they don't understand why it's important. So I hope that I've answered some questions for you guys today. and I hope that that will inspire you to become involved in government. So here is a list of Laramie County's representatives. All of these people are the voice for Laramie County. Not all of them are your district per se, but they will all be willing to listen to you if you ever contact them. Their contact information is available online. So I've got some additional resources, and those are all in the brochures that I have over here as well. So the first one is Wyoming. That is the legislator's website, and that's what I'm going to go over a little more in depth because it's a really useful website for involvement. Next is the court systems website. So here you can find out more information about each level of court. You can find rulings and opinions of the court and information about the justices. Here is a list of Wyoming's government's agencies and top 5 elected officials. So it's basically a portal to websites for all of the top 5 elected positions as well as all of Wyoming's agencies. So that's where you can find more information. Finally is a link to registering to vote. So this is the Secretary of State's website, and it gives you information about how to register and that sort of stuff as well. So I want to explain to you guys a little bit about Wyoming legislative website. So first when you go there, you'll get a little pop-up if you want to get latest updates. You can put your email address in. So if you've been on the legislative website before, it might look a little different. They revamped their website this April, and it functions a lot better now. So first you'll see some information, like the interim committees or the Capitol buildings like construction. Then if you scroll down, you get a calendars. So when the legislator is doing what, information about committees. This is my favorite part, and so I'm gonna go over that part a little bit more in depth, but it shows you all of the bills that have come forth. Finally, there is information about the senators and representatives, and you can even find what district you're in on the legislator, Find My Legislature section of the website. So if you click here, it'll bring you some information about the senators. So here's a roster. So here is their emails and their phone numbers for all of the senators, all of the representatives. You can find out who is the leadership of in the Senate and the representatives. You can find out who's part of what committee. If you go, you can even find out who sits where, which is kind of hard to see because you can't actually see anyone, but there's a thing. So then finally, there's the Find My Legislator. So if you go on, here's a map with all the districts. You just click Find My District, input your address, city and zip code, and then they will tell you who your legislator is. And then there's the same thing for representatives and then the maps as well. So my favorite part is the legislation section. So you can look at all the past bills. These are all of the bills for 2018. So there are a lot of them. And these are just House bills. Now we're into the Senate ones. So there's a lot of these. Not all of them obviously had any progress done on them. But if you want to view some more information about these, this is my favorite part about their website. So if you click on the number like I just did, you can read a copy of the bill and see what it says. You can look at what its status was. So here it made it through the House. Here's where it made it through the Senate. Here's where I'm not actually sure what this means, sorry. It looks like it went back to the House for some more readings, the Senate, and then the governor signed it into law. So you can find exactly what progress the bills have made. You can see where they've stalled. You can see that they added amendments to the bills, and then you can read the amendments. You can even see where people voted. So you can see who voted for yes or no on a bill. So if you're looking for how your representative is voting on things, this is one way you can do that. And then there's just a summary of what's going on as well. So this is definitely my favorite part, because if you're not in Cheyenne and you want to track what's going on, this website gives you the ability to. I was at the legislature this this past session and on their website while they were debating, and they update the website really quickly as well. It's almost real time, not quite obviously, but they're able to update this stuff pretty quickly. It's not like at the very end of it they put everything in. They update as the session goes on, so if you're not in Cheyenne and you still want to stay informed, the website is really, really good for that kind of information. So that's my favorite thing, is that website right there. So on over that. Is there any questions?
Sarah, this could be unfair, but okay. But I'm curious. There's been a lot of talk about how, as a midterm election coming up, that we could see significantly more and different voter participation. So, in particular for women. But I'm curious what you think about voter participation for young adults. You know, who you're targeting, your 18 to 25-year-olds. What are your thoughts about that for this midterm?
I think that people underestimate the importance of midterms just because it's not the presidential election. People seem to think that the presidential election is the most important one, when really it's who's in Congress, who's in your state legislatures that's more important, because they are the ones who are making bills and going through that process. So while the presidential election is very important, and I won't diminish that in any way, people underestimate the importance of that, and especially in Wyoming, because in Wyoming, the midterm election is where we elect our top 5 elected officials as well. That's when we elect our governor and secretary of state and all those other positions.
Do you think we'll see more young people? Do you think we'll see more young people?
I think that the parties are doing a good job of trying to mobilize young adults as well, because they realize that these old people have been hearing stuff from their parties for years and years and years, and they've kind of made up their minds, but young people are still impressionable. They haven't necessarily figured out where they stand. And so I think that the parties are also doing a good job of trying to mobilize young voters in the election. So I wanted to have a quick slide to everyone who helped. I've got donations from Laramie County Club, Rotary Club, Modern Printing, and a special thanks to Kathy, who has been my advisor on my project.